My name is Vivian Gottfredson. I identify as a human. My pronouns are she, her. It's something that I didn't even know that was a thing. Really, it was totally not something that was in my radar. I was raised extremely, very religiously and in a very conservative, religious home. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. So I was always just my mother was a single mom. And so I was too busy raising children to really focus on things like my identity, but it was always something that was kind of strange to me, or off, like something didn't quite fit in with how I was supposed to be behaving or acting or whatever. When I was in college, I was doing my first, it was a essay writing thing for an English class. And I have no idea how I ended up doing this, but I was researching childhood, what was called at the time, childhood gender nonconformity disorder. And I don't know if that's still the terminology that's used. But I was really fascinated by these stories of these kids that they were sharing about their experience and how they just didn't kind of fit in with other people. And then it started to one research avenue turned to another and turned to another. And I was like, why am I so compelled and pulled into this? And it was like, then a lot of it was like, because it's resonating with you, honey, because it's like, this is your story and you haven't heard it before. And that's kind of a big deal, and it took a long time to digest. And I really, I didn't want to. And I figured I was like, I can just go on living my life however I am. It's fine. That's great. Like, yay for people who take that big step and decide to completely, reclaim their life. But I was just like, I can't do that. And I honestly don't know what the turning point was when I got to a point where I was just like, I absolutely cannot do this anymore. It just starts to feel constricting, like everything, breathing, being awake, being asleep, anything. It just feels impossible. And I, decided to talk to some friends about it. And then first started using different pronouns than I was at the time, or kind of exploring just what it would feel like, to kind of like dipping my toes in the water, almost. But yeah, it happens so naturally for me that I almost can't determine a before and after, choosing to view my life as always being like this. And it's also hard for me to recall because it's something I don't ever talk about. I make a point of not talking about it because I'm like, I do this. There's all these other things about me. My transness has nothing to do with my professional career or the things I want people to know me for. And so I won't talk about it. But then it's constantly all of this, all of these experiences and things that happen where I realize that obviously life is just a little different for me. I grew up in kind of a conservative area as well. I'm from Las Vegas, and a lot of people think like, whoa, like crazy fun. And I'm like, no, it was settled by like Mormons and like the mafia or like the mob or whatever. I don't know. It's a very conservative town, actually. So you can never leave my house, not once, without being called names or yelled at or whatever. And so a certain sense of like not feeling safe had always been part of my life. But the moment that I started HRT and my body started changing and things about me were different, and they were just different enough to be really unsettling for people. It became a lot more apparent that my experience was going to be very different, because not only was I starting to be viewed as a woman, but I was being viewed as a trans woman, which is a far less safe place to be. I was doing this all in a very public way. I worked in a bar at the time. And I continued to work in restaurants after making this decision, because that's what I've done. That's where my work experience was. And I decided to go back to school and study hair. I wanted to change my career path. I decided I was going to give myself everything I've ever wanted. And doing hair was like one big thing that I've always been like, girl, that's a little too femme. Like, you've got enough going on. You don't need to do the hairdresser thing too. But I ended up following that path, and it's been incredibly rewarding. My physical transition has been a very public thing. And it's a really uncomfortable thing to do in the public eye, because you're dealing with people who are who don't know anything about you, who are just kind of I don't know. I think it's really unsettling for people, and I don't know why, but it's very obvious when someone's looking at me like, oh, that's a very interesting looking person. She's got a neat look or something. And like, what is that? Those are two very distinctly different looks. And I still get the what is that quite frequently, and I'm intentionally misgendered and strange things said to me. And I realized there's like a huge focus on my body. And that there are things that I didn't think about before, or things about my body that weren't interesting or questionable to complete strangers, or even people I've known for a long time, were all of a sudden on the table for discussion. And so trying to navigate that and set boundaries as much as I could for people that I interacted with was kind of a tricky part of my experience. When I was kind of explaining the process a little bit to my mother early on, I was explaining to her, I was like, I'm not a cis woman, and that's not the goal. That's not a goal for me. Like, I'm a trans woman. I'm very proud of that. I don't necessarily choose that as a defining label because I want to be seen and respected as a woman, because I should be, because I am. It's a very simple, like, cut and dry thing for me. But my experience is very different than that of just being seen and identified and respected and viewed as a woman. I just think that being aware that people have different experiences, and that everyone just wants to go about their day and like not be gawked at or yelled at or treated any differently. I think that everyone should have that's kind of a basic right in my mind. And so I guess it's just as simple as saying that, all of our experiences are different. And when we see people, on the streets, or when we interact with people or strangers, or we don't know, like, everyone is coming from a different background and has a completely different experience, and we're not always coming to the table and sitting in the same chair. In fact, we rarely are. And just to be aware of that and having an openness to hearing other people's stories too. Sorry, I'm getting emotional because it completely blows me away to see little kids today that were in my position and are given, like, are heard and are respected and are like just completely allowed to be their best and happiest self, without being hammered into some model that their parents maybe want them to be to fit into society, and that's supported by there's like schools and stuff now. I mean, we're in Portland, so it's like, this isn't everywhere. But I mean, the little glimpses of it that I see from a few people that I know that have like kids that are like, their experience is completely different than what mine was. And just seeing how, just imagining how different my life would be. My partner and I talk about this frequently. Like, could you imagine if we were raised the way that some of our friends are raising their children now? Like, how much more confident we would be, like how much more fearless we would be, how much further in life we would be. I think it starts so much at home, and it's like I think it's like really easy to think about that stuff right now too, with like Thanksgiving coming up and Christmas and holidays and like things that that I absolutely dreaded and I hated and I didn't celebrate for, I mean, many years after I like moved out of home, and even then tried to avoid it because it wasn't just in the house. It was like the people you were supposed to feel safe with, like in your immediate family, and then in school, and then in the world. Like it was like every bubble of safety that was supposed to feel safe wasn't. And that's starting to change. And that's what the future looks like to me is, these kids who are saying, this is who I am, and being heard and respected, and getting to live their life the way that every other child gets to live their life. I have a friend who described this like really, I'm trying to remember what she said because it really resonated with me and it was true for me. The most beautiful part of being trans is, she told me that everyone's going to tell you you're going to be crazy. A lot of things are going to change. You're like basically going through a second puberty. And she told me the world will be more beautiful. Colors will be brighter. Everything will feel lighter. You'll feel so much more full of life. Like everything will feel right. And she was absolutely right. It's like getting to feel wholeness and knowing what that is, and getting to see the world from completely different perspectives too, and being able, it's a type of vision of like seeing in the world. It's kind of like you go to art school, you learn how to see, and then it's similar with transitioning. You learn how to see in a different way, and everything becomes so much more.